The only one who didn't know realms could unite? Let's dive into Aether and Earth. Aether is the unseen force, the spirit, the voice, the vibration that governs all realities. Earth is the structure, the clay, the form, the matter that harnesses all that is created. Through Aether and Earth we harness divinity, create from the abyss and give form to the void. Each content, each word, each project, encoded with intention to reveal the alignment of the unseen with the seen. This is a movement for those who walk between worlds, the architects of the future, the ones who sense the call of the invisible and dare to shape the physical in response. Aether and Earth is your call to remember, to awaken the dominion within you, to command reality with elegance, precision, and presence. Welcome to the altar of fusion. Heaven is no longer above. It descended long ago, and it is here on Earth. This is Aether and Earth.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Aether and Earth. I am joined by Samuel Daerego. Tonight we are here together to discuss identity and just the overwhelming nature of what this means to each and every one of us in everyday life. So in terms of identity, I look at identity as something that is a massive struggle for all too many of us. So many of us will grow up wondering who we are and clinging to other things that will help define us and that we can identify with. We are constantly jostled to and fro with other people, trying to figure out who we are and who our identity is. And it's something that is so fundamental to each one of us. And I think here on Earth, we have the opportunity to do that. We have the opportunity to find out who we are and how we want to experience life and how we want to express ourselves in whatever form that may take. Now, identity can take many different forms, and it's anything that we cling to. So it can be as simple as clinging to our gender or our religion or our culture or our town or the brands that we wear on the shirts that we have. Any of these things can form the identity of who we are. It can be the fact that, I've got brown hair. And so all of these things, they combine overall to form an identity about us. And if we're not careful, all of these things will start to define who we are as an individual. And little do we know that what we are is much, much more intrinsically inside. So in terms of identity, what I like to do is I like to go back to the picture of the mountain. So the mountain behind me, for example, is that we're all climbing a mountain. Little do we know that this mountain is ourself, that we're actually climbing this mountain and conquering the mountain as we go about our lives. So with this mountain, it can be such an arduous journey. One of the things that I like to talk about is the spiral of life, how everything is a spiral and we move into the center as we get older. We keep repeating certain journeys, we keep repeating certain experiences until we have come to a centered perspective of life. So that was also embodied in the picture of the shepherd. So we're told that the shepherd leads the sheep. Well, that's not true. In Australian culture, yes, the shepherd or the farmer would actually herd the sheep and chase the sheep. Where in an Arabic or an African context, a shepherd would actually lead and walk ahead of the sheep and they would follow, which is a far different context. And in the context as well, it's quite interesting how the shepherd would lead the sheep up the mountain, but they wouldn't just go straight up the mountain. They would actually go in a spiral around the mountain to get up the mountain and scale the mountain. So I think that's quite an interesting picture for us as we journey this spiral of life, and we conquer this mountain, which is intrinsically and inherently us. Jesus talks about how we can cast our mountain into the sea if we have that mustard seed of faith. Well, it is true. We can do that. We can do that with our identity in terms of scaling the mountain. When we get up to the mountain and we have conquered the mountain, we actually have a completely different view, a completely different viewpoint of who we are. And it is from that viewpoint that we can start to see that we have conquered ourselves, but we have also come into an inheritance that is so vast that it goes beyond the horizon, which we can see in a full 360-degree view. So it's quite astounding in terms of what our identity actually unlocks should we wish to take the journey and should we wish to conquer that which is set before us. Samuel, you've just joined us again.
Yeah. I'm so happy to be glad in this episode, and what you have been saying has been like absolutely amazing about identity and how it is actually the center of our being. It's the center of gravity from which our destiny revolves. So identity is very, very pivotal. I consider it as the foundation of destiny, and it's the center that enables us to be able to like the map, that's a reference point, a standpoint from which we're able to launch into destiny. Identity is the main thing. Identity is the fundamental. Once that realization is begins to board within our own consciousness, once we begin to know who we are beyond all external noise, beyond what we are going through, beyond the situations around us, we begin to realize who we are. We realize that what we are going through in the external world, the trials and the tribulations, don't really define us. What defines us is our nature within, what we have realized. And identity is a journey of self-discovery. It's a journey of shedding. It's a journey of unveiling, and journey where you are shedding off skins. And in this journey, there's a whole lot of transitions that happens, most of which can be painful. Just like when a caterpillar is shedding off, is coming out of his cocoon from the chrysalis, is coming out of his cocoon. Imagine. So identity is not a fixed reality. It's an ever evolve. It's a stage of evolution where we are journeying into, we are rediscovering ourselves. Like it's a journey of self-discovery, a journey where at every point in your seasons in your life, you are realizing yourself and you are finding out who you are on a deeper level. And it's most of the times it's a journey of transformation where sometimes it's uncertainty. You don't even know what you're feeling. You don't know what is going on with you, but you can literally feel like a definition of yourself. It's as if you are confused, as if you don't know who you are again. You are literally being redefined within, like finding, because we are multidimensional. So we are always rediscovering new dimensions of ourselves, new depths of ourselves to be able to embody. So I think that the journey of identity it's a very, very pivotal. It's the foundation that gives it like a reference point, a standpoint to our destiny. Once you are able to keep journeying, keep realizing who you are deeply on a deeper level, you realize that you are equipped at every junction to be able to handle what it takes to be you. There is no like the storms of life are not withering you. You are not being withered by what you are going through. You are being able to find out, you are being able to stand, you are being able to withstand the severe and unfair and harsh realities of the world. without allowing it to phase you. Just like even in the scripture, the Bible says, Jesus said, the house that is built on the rock, when the wind came and swayed it different times, it still remains standing. That's how the life of someone that is built on identity, that is built on that center of gravity, they are able to become immune to all the winds and the storms that comes at them through life. So yeah,
I think it's really
that's what.
interesting. It's really interesting that you're talking about shedding our skin. I think a few years ago I had this vision of this snake shedding its skin, and we're like that snake. You know, we have been eating the dust of the earth, and there comes a time where we have to stop eating the dust of the earth and realize that we have to stop eating that dust. And so there's great wisdom in then eating our tail like the Ouroboros. As Jesus said, I have food that you know not of. There is such a feast and a food within us in terms of our own souls and the spirit that is within us that brings intrinsic revelation to us versus the external revelation that we can attain to. There comes a time where you have to stop reading books and start to be able to feast on the own revelation in your own heart. And I know for me, I have a bookcase of books, which I've loved reading books in the past, but it's a time to put away those books and to come into the revelation that is coming through my heart, and that I am able to eat and process and swallow for myself. And that's a very important step in terms of someone's maturity. Coming back
exactly. No one can tell you who you are.
No. Coming back to that, Samuel, and I'll just briefly touch on that. It really intrigues me that in the New Testament, in the Gospels, Jesus didn't actually introduce himself. He actually said to people, "Who do you think I am?" So it's really interesting that I don't have to define or announce myself in any given scenario. I can actually come in and it's the other person's representation of who I am that actually counts, because it's through their representation of who I am that they're going to be able to see into me and understand me and hear me. So I think that's a very important thing that we can remember when we're coming into scenarios. I was going to go down a different track now and actually talk once again about identity from a basic level. So at a basic level, we are the being, we are the human being, but we're not just a human being, we're actually a divine being at the same time. So there comes a point in our lives where there's an intersection of our humanity and our divinity as we start to wake up to who we are as that divine being. To begin with, though, we are the I am. We are the spirit or the consciousness seeping through the being of our humanity in any given situation. So what we're doing is we're expressing that forth in any given scenario that we find ourselves in. And we are defining ourselves and limiting ourselves based upon what we put after those two words. So I am. I am that I am. I am that which I limit myself to and define myself to be. But I am a limitless being. There is no dimension to who I am underneath this human mask that I wear. So I think it's very interesting for us to be able to strip all the notions of who we are off, to be able to experience the raw potential that is each one of us in terms of the expression and the experience of who we are as a soul. So obviously it talks in the Bible about being body, spirit, and soul. What if we're all three sandwiched together and we are this body, we are our humanity, and we are the divinity? all in one. It's quite an interesting combination to get our heads around. But going back to the words of Jesus, it's interesting that he does not define himself. Do we need to define ourselves in a given scenario? Do we have to limit ourselves in a given scenario? It's interesting how we often introduce ourselves by I am so-and-so, I am this, I am that. So I think it's important for us to take stock and take wisdom in how we communicate ourselves and how we make ourselves available to the world around us. But it's certainly an experience that we come into in terms of a limitless potential. So as we've scaled that mountain that I was talking about, we're getting up to the pinnacle and we're able to take in the whole of the potential of who we are, the whole of the potential of what we already have inherited that has been at our fingertips all this time, but it's been unawares to us because we haven't been ready to see the full picture. We haven't been ready to actually come into that place and in the knowledge of who we are, in the authority of who we are, and be able to take that on. Be still and know that I am God is an invitation to be still in all that we're doing and come into a remembrance of who we are as God, as the divine character. There's also another interpretation of that is let go and know that I am God. So let go of all the identifications that you have in this world, and you will find that your divinity is there all along, staring back at you. And it's for you to come into that realization of, hang on, this external reality that I thought existed is actually an internal one, and it's within me. And you realize the inherent oneness of all of creation around you, and that includes every person, every rock, every tree, every river. You start to experience the oneness in which we are actually unfolded into, and it's a beautiful it's such a beautiful reality to come into, is, hang on, I am one with all of this. I'm not just one with the creator, but I am one with all of creation. And it unlocks all of the mysteries which we have been longing to unpack throughout our lives of what is behind that door. Well, behind that door belongs to us, and you can walk through that door into that next room. You can sit down and you can, instead of drinking the milk that was yours up until now, you can come into the meat which is placed before you to eat. Obviously, in terms of that picture, we can talk a lot about salvation, because salvation is another word for wholeness. So coming into the notion that you are whole, well, the thing is, you have always been whole. You have always been saved. There has been no fear. There has been no condemnation at all in terms of your journey, and there never will be, because of who you are, because it's always been yours all along anyway. And you're just stepping into your inheritance. You're stepping into the crown which has belonged to you throughout this time. So this whole notion of salvation is actually a step into wholeness. And this whole time you've been working that wholeness and that fear, that salvation out with fear and trembling. Why? Because you have not understood. You have wrestled with it this whole time, not knowing exactly who you are. So it's such a beautiful picture of coming into this wholeness and being able to just sit still, having done all, just stand, having done all, just rest and enjoy that which is before you. So obviously that rest is something so paramount and so essential to us in terms of being able to come into just a state of having let go, and coming into the stillness, that we can just appreciate the qualities of everything around us. Before, we were looking out of our tinted glasses and only seeing one view. where the reality is that in this place we can start to take it all in and take in the multi-dimensional nature of reality around us, where all along we've been focused on the one dimension, which is our own lives. Now we actually have the opportunity to take in everything that has been created and put around us, and we can actually join with that and create and co-create actively, and not just here on the earth, but in the universe and beyond. It's quite astounding, really, in terms of just the richness of what we have come into our inheritance, and what we can now do based upon the fact that we are the intersection of humanity and divinity. We are the intersection of infinity and eternity. We are everything that we could, be imagine and more, but it is limited by who we say that we are.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's the definition, the worldly definitions that we get from the world, and everything that the world tries to impose upon us doesn't define our identity. We like the identity is actually from within. So before I actually got caught up by my network, I was actually saying that nobody can actually tell us who we are. Like nobody can tell us who we are. Nobody can define it for us. Nobody. It's actually a realization that has to come within from our inner depth, from our inner core. It's not something that we can just get easily. It's something that has to be found deeply. And most of the times, to rediscover yourself when it is time for you to rediscover yourself, you realize that you are going through journeys of isolation and loneliness. You are having to you are being exiled from the people around you, the familiar people around you, because it's actually a journey to discover yourself anew, right? So that it's not easy. It can be tough, it can be lonely, it can be where you are just you are just alone in that space of discovery. But when you come out of that space, you come out formidable, you come out strong. We have a lot of people that are swayed easily because they do not know who they are. So they're easily swayed by the world. They're easily swayed by what people say about them. They're easily swayed by external opinions. They're easily swayed by what they are going through, whatever situation and circumstances they are going through. But that identity, it's like a level of self-awareness where your situation doesn't really matter. You're just in that space, in that flow state of awareness where it doesn't even matter if what you're going through, it doesn't even matter what is happening to you, it doesn't even matter what you're experiencing. You are just in that flow state of identity. You are in that flow state of realization where everything is possible. You are just moving in your identity and it's something that at every season, at every junction of your journeys, there will be a point where it is required of you to rediscover yourself, because identity is more like a qualification for each phase, for each new phase of destiny. At every time, it's time for you. At every point that you are destined for an upgrade, it's time for you to move into something new. You realize that you are rediscovering yourself anew, and it can be like confusion in your consciousness. It can be like you don't know what to do, but it's actually identity being
And
unveiled.
it's interesting what you're talking about, because in the New Testament it says that those that are born of the Spirit go with the wind. So those who are born of their divinity actually go with the flow, go with the wind, go with the river, wherever that may lead. And as we know, with people such as Paul in the New Testament, sometimes those places aren't the places we want to go to, but yet in the midst of those places we can have the greatest revelations, we can have the greatest breakthroughs in terms of our personal victories, should we allow ourselves to go in those directions. And sometimes it is through going into different places like that that we can experience the greater opportunity to face ourselves, to face our identity, and also the greatest place of promotion, just as we know with Joseph going out of the prison. It's very much the same for each one of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's that space of realization, and it's not sometimes when you're in that phase where you're trying to discover yourself. A whole lot of people that are familiar around you might not really understand. A few people will understand, a few others might not necessarily understand. So you have to be you if you should realize that identity is a personal journey. It's not something that you should expect others to necessarily resonate with you. Yeah, there will be people that will come to your life, new relationship as time goes on that will understand, but most times you will be misunderstood as you journey into your identity, as you unveil, because most of the times as you shed identity and rediscover yourself anew, the identity that you used to operate a previous season, when you are entering a new season, when you shed that identity and you are about to rediscover yourself, a whole lot of people that could were able to fathom you, were able to relate with you, might not necessarily be able to relate with you again. Not necessarily because they are bad people, or not necessarily because they are not good, but it's just that you are rediscovering yourself, and there's a journey of rediscovery, and it's requiring you to be able to find yourself. So that version of you, the version of you that everybody around you was used to, the version of you that was more relatable, the version of you that had a lot of companions and people and around, once you begin to evolve, that version is gone, and there's another version of you that is present. So you realize that the people around you cannot really vibe, they cannot really relate. The problem is not with you, neither is even with them. It's just that your identity is unfolding and you are evolving into a new version of yourself. What people call evolution into a higher and stronger version of yourself is actually you coming into a higher realization of your identity. Is you ascending the ladder of your identity. It's you ascending, walking through the stairs of realization, walking through the stairs and being unveiled to who you are, knowing yourself on a deeper level again and again and again. The journey never ends. It's always ongoing. It's always ongoing. And where as long as you keep going, as long as it keeps unraveling within you, there is no stagnation. But once you are static, once you are trying to conform to what it's applicable around, then you are stuck. You are conformed. Conformation is like a solid state of it's like a static state, like when the water that you are is freezed in conformation to what is around you. But transformation is like a flow state, more like condensation, where you are metamorphosing, you are changing, you are shifting state, you are switching state, alchemy. So you are not defined by one state. You are in that multidimensional flow where you are all things to all men. Yet you cannot be defined by one thing. Exactly.
It's really interesting about going up your mountain. Like, your responsibility is your mountain. You know, no one else has that responsibility. You have that responsibility, and it's your responsibility to climb your mountain and to get to the top. And in the process of doing that, you will come across other people. And once again, you are not responsible for them. They are responsible for them. And it's at this point that you'll realize that you're operating on different frequencies, different vibrations, different bandwidths to what some of these other people are operating on. There is no shame in not in operating on the same level as someone at that particular time. They might be operating at a higher level. You might be operating at a lower level. There is an opportunity there for you to learn from one another. There's an opportunity for you to encourage one another and serve one another. And it is up to you how you handle that interaction. But the ultimate knowledge is that you have your path and they have their path. And sometimes, for whatever reasons, that path will change and will veer. And so it's a maturity, I think, in acknowledging this. It's not a fact that you are lower down the mountain than me and I'm higher up. It's not actually that in terms of the dimension of who we are at a soul level. It's actually just to represent the stages of where we're at in terms of our spiritual journeys. And I think it was very interesting, Samuel, you were talking about the wilderness experience. Well, the wilderness experience is a lonely experience. It's one where we are separated out from other people. It is a time where, you know, certain relationships get severed and certain demands, you know, get made of us, while other things are stripped away. And it's a time of cleansing. It's a time of loneliness as we are separated away from certain people in our lives. But it's also this wonderful, beautiful place, because the thing is, we look at a wilderness as a desolate place, but that place is actually a blank canvas ready for us to be able to start picking up our paintbrush and being able to start painting away, or starting to be able to create or form something beautiful in that place. And that's the beauty of the wilderness, is that we actually get a place to be able to have our own means to be able to communicate with that which is going through our souls, and to be able to connect in a higher way, which we wouldn't be able to do if we were faced with all the distractions of life or the distractions of certain relationships. So it's a time where we're actually able to be realigned and come into an alignment that we wouldn't otherwise be if we didn't have that place of solitude.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's very necessary to be aware of that, of when that season occurs, and to be able to discern it, and to be able to let go, right? Let go of certain things, let go of certain situations, let go of certain um atmospheres that may not necessarily resonate with what we are heading, where we are headed towards. Because that's what actually makes a lot of people stuck. That's what actually stagnates a lot of people. They are trying to fit into something that has already expired for them, and it doesn't really serve them. That phase, that company may not necessarily serve them. So it when it's time to step up higher, when you realize that something that you do not understand but you can fully relate with is unlocking on your inside, do not be afraid.
So in any case, we thank you for joining us for this episode of Aether and Earth. We've obviously discussed identity today, and we thank you for joining us. Ask that if you have any questions, please ask them here and we will get back to you. We look forward to coming back with a new episode next week. And if you have any suggestions for what you would like us to talk about, please let us know.
Why do mystics find power in the unseen? Let's unlock the realms of Aether and Earth. Aether, the unseen force, spirit, voice, vibration, weight. Earth, the clay, form, matter. Together they forge a dominion of divine essence, a movement for those who walk between worlds. Command reality with elegance, precision, and presence. Welcome to Aether and Earth. Stay tuned.